Nothing in this podcast is intended as investment advice, and the people in this podcast may hold positions in the stocks they talk about. Do not buy any investment based solely on a tip or recommendation. Please do your own research.
Hello and welcome to the Midweek Takeaway. In this episode, we sit down with Hewie Rattray, CEO of the London Bitcoin company, formerly Vinanz, to talk about his journey in crypto, the company's strategic shift, and what the future holds as they scale Bitcoin mining and accumulation operations across North America. Welcome back to the show, Hewie. How's things?
All good, Phil. Thank you, everyone, for having me again.
No problem. Yeah, I mean, you recently stepped into the CEO role, I think it was in May at Vinanz or London Bitcoin company. Just tell us a bit about your background in crypto and what led you to this new chapter, please.
Yeah, so I have had a long background in crypto, more than 10 years. I just think the space was very appealing to me when I graduated from university. And yeah, I became almost addicted to it, right? And I kind of did my exploratory phase, into the deeper, darker realms of kind of altcoins and whatnot. And now I'm back in the Bitcoin space. I think I said last time I want to refer to myself as a Bitcoin preferentialist. Always keep an open mind, but for Vinanz / the London Bitcoin company, we're fully focused on Bitcoin as a treasury asset. I think it's the only one that makes sense in the industry as a treasury asset. And yeah, we're kind of loving building the balance sheet with Bitcoin, and I think we'll continue to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we saw the news that the company had recently rebranded, or it has an intention to rebrand from Vinanz to the London Bitcoin company. What kind of drove that change, and what message does it send to the market and shareholders? Presumably, you've talked in the past about a London identity and a real Bitcoin focus.
Yeah, I think, the conversation came up when we were having initial meetings in New York with our NASDAQ banker, Dominari, and a couple of institutional investors there. And, what I was telling them when we kind of speaking to them was, the appeal to American investors here, you have to pitch these guys on your business, right? We're saying the appeal to American investors here is the London opportunity. And the London opportunity is just so poignant right now because there's no ETFs or ETNs, and, we're way further behind on the adoption curve. So we've got all this upside to come in the UK, right? That's already been covered in the US. So, in the midst of that sales pitch, we were kind of talking about how we market ourselves in such a way. And actually one of the bankers said, we should change your name. And I was like, okay. And then we kind of iterated on some names, me, the board members, and to be honest, ChatGPT. And, we came to the conclusion that it's like a place name. I can't remember how you refer to them, but, there's big ones in the world, like the Boston Consulting Group, or like, I don't know, the London Stock Company, or things like that. The Cambridge Satchel Company is another big one. And we just thought maybe if we just do the most relevant name possible, we're on the London Stock Exchange, let's just be the London Bitcoin Company. And actually the official name will be the London BTC Company, because BVI, where we're registered, won't allow you to use Bitcoin in your name. But for all intents and purposes, we're going to be branded as the London Bitcoin Company on socials and everywhere else.
Keep it simple. I like it. It's pretty straightforward. Yeah. So obviously your strategy goes just beyond the mining. We talked about that. We touched on that on the roast, but you're obviously building a treasury of Bitcoin. Why was the decision made to combine operational mining with a kind of a long-term holding? And how do you see this differentiating you in the public markets?
So we were originally a miner, and we still are to some extent a miner. And I think at the beginning of this year, when we were doing the IPO into the LSE, we were very aware of the kind of upcoming treasury trade, right? As in, the popularity in the market and the opportunity in the market. So we actually, if you go back and read our prospectus, you can see when we were outlining the permissions that we'd have, when we were outlining the prospectus and the permissions that we'd have, we included, capital would be used for, amongst other things, buying Bitcoin miners, buying Bitcoin, and buying Bitcoin related assets, i.e. ETFs or other treasury companies. So we kind of covered our base with the FCA and the London Stock Exchange when we issued that prospectus and when we IPO'd in January. And then it was a case of just kind of not making too much noise in the first couple of months because we were so relieved that they'd let us on the exchange in the first place, right? I know you guys would have seen that Argo is now going into effectively liquidation, right? As of yesterday. So we really will be the only Bitcoin core business that's left on the London Stock Exchange. And, we intend to keep our presence here, as well as we're doing the dual list on NASDAQ. We want to take advantage of the fact that we're the only one on the London Stock Exchange. I think I've answered it, maybe.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so. So
Sorry,
Hugh,
my brain at this time of day, my brain is so fried, and I'm just like going through one to the other to the internet.
Wait, Huey, I'll walk you through my morning. It was sports day, right? At my 6-year-old school, and it's non-competitive, which I don't agree with.
Yeah.
In terms of parents' race, the parents' race, all the dads line up. You can feel the tension, like someone's going to come last. And it's not going to be me. But anyway, it lasted 2.5 hours, which is an hour and a half more than it should. No one had any drinks. It's boiling hot weather, so every time we're kind of stumbling over. Anyway, long story short, I don't blame you for losing your train of thought because I lost mine while you were talking.
Yeah.
So yeah,
but Huey, I want to ask you some questions, and I want to ask because we have to have some sort of differentiation between these Bitcoin companies, okay?
Yeah.
And that there are going to be different methods to get these Bitcoins, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I want you to lay out 3 or 4 methods, because we all know raise buy, okay? This is not a surprise for anybody, okay? You're gonna raise at the bid, buy loads of Bitcoin, and then hopefully the share price goes up and you repeat. Now nobody's saying that won't happen, because I'm sure it will, okay? But there has to be more way of adding value to these companies, and this is the whole point behind this sector, is how do we add that value, and how do you perceive that you're going to be able to add that value?
Yeah, so you're right. Like the most vanilla way to finance this whole concept is just raise equity at the bid, which has become the normal, or round about the bid. I don't think that's going to be the long-term strategy for treasury companies. And as you'll see, new strategy is not really dilutive equity, right? Like they've made all these innovative new products, and they're kind of pioneering a whole bunch of different products that are now financing them. And the reason why they're doing that is because the ATM was bearing quite badly on their price, basically. So they've had to think of these more non-dilutive forms of financing. Now, I think when I think of my own playbook, so to speak, like what I want to do is effectively get leveraged upside covered to Bitcoin without adding too much risk, right? Without having a big liquidation risk, or without, risking our stack in its entirety. Now, the way that I go about choosing what to do is by looking at the other successful treasury companies and how they've done really well. I like the blockchain group in Paris. They do these Bitcoin denominated bonds, i.e. they find a Bitcoin well, someone say with 250 Bitcoin, 25 mil, right? And they say to him, and then they make a proposal to him, give us your Bitcoin in the form of, we'll issue you a bond for your Bitcoin, right? So a $25 million bond, or thereabouts. And the bond will pay a very low yield or zero yield, and you'll have a conversion kicker on the bond 30% above today's market close price, right? If it comes to the end of the bond term, 12 months or 2 years or whatever it is, and your options aren't in the money, the share price has suffered for whatever reason, we'll just give you your Bitcoin back, right? If it comes to the end of the bond term and we've gone up 3, 4, 5 times, you obviously convert, and you then can choose to sell your stock and actually replenish the Bitcoin you gave to the bond in the first place. So it's giving Bitcoin whales basically leveraged free upside or a free call option on your stock and letting them put their Bitcoin to work to get that. So that's kind of one of those kind of deals that makes sense for both parties, right? As a Bitcoin treasury company, all you want to do is get Bitcoin on your balance sheet. As an investor with Bitcoin, you probably want to leverage that and try and earn some money off it. And this covers you on both sides. So, I mean, without talking too much, this is something that we're looking quite seriously into. Alternatives to that, like I like the idea, I think I discussed it on the last podcast, of using the options market as a way to get us exposure, by either doing covered calls or doing we're selling puts and earning the premium. If we don't think Bitcoin's going to go below a certain price, we'll sell put options on it, earn the premium, put the premiums into Bitcoin. If we want some more risky leveraged upside, we'll buy some call options, at the money today or whatever, and we'll ride them up. I think, we've just been bouncing back and forth with strategy and opening some accounts which allow us to do all this kind of stuff. So yeah, I think that's 2 forms of financing.
Yeah.
And then you've got, the more obvious things like the ATMs, where I just don't think, I don't want to rely on equity forever, because I think, the bond market's a lot more sensible.
Yeah, I was going to ask a question about the currency risk, which is quite ironic considering we're talking about Bitcoin. But the currency risk between the dollar and the pound, because you are going to be the London BTC company.
Yeah.
And you're going to be priced in British pounds.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a play there that you can actually make money on that exchange rate? Because we're all betting on the fact that the dollar is probably going to depreciate, because, you know, that's part of the reason why maybe Bitcoin's going to rise as well, because the dollar is basically printing more of it and depreciating.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying the pound isn't doing the same thing, but maybe not to the same extent. So is there some sort of hedge there to be done in terms of between dollar and sterling?
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, the big narrative is like the de-dollarization of the world and the end of US exceptionalism, or whatever they want to call it. And, you know, you're effectively long Bitcoin and short the dollar. You know, I don't really have a view on cable as a currency pair. Like, you know, I think we're both probably doing equally as badly. Well, US do better economically, but in terms of, you know, printing and purchasing power, like we're both dwindling at a rapid rate, right? Now, I'm not in the FX market, so I'm not sure quite how I'll monetize pounds against dollars. I just don't have that experience. I'm more focused on monetizing my Bitcoin against pounds.
Yeah. Well, at the minute, we're talking 137, and it's gone up quite significantly from sort of mid-20s, 127, and reports are coming out that they think the dollar pound could go to 150, 160. Oh, I don't know, Charles, have you got any thoughts on that?
Well, for me, yeah, I mean, my basic perspective is simple, which is that there's two things. First is they're adding $5 trillion of a debt ceiling, so the US dollar is going to become less valuable regardless. And then the other kind of like medium-term issue you have is that Trump wants interest rates down to, you know, the federal funds rate down to like 1% or below. So very shortly they're going to introduce a yes man who's going to make that happen. When they introduce him, even if this person only replaces Powell in 2026, you're going to have a US dollar sell-off, because people are going to think, well, look at this situation. US dollar, if it goes down to a 1% rate, no one wants to hold that. We'll either buy gold or potentially Bitcoin, or, you know, real metals potentially. So you've got this kind of classic situation where the US dollar's in real kind of trouble. At the same time, equities and the S&P 500 is, you know, ostensibly it's at record highs, but the US dollar is crashing. So is it really? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think, you know, these are kind of existential questions. I think, for example, does it make sense to convert your pounds into dollars and then buy Bitcoin? Potentially, I don't know. But I do think against all currencies that it'll continue to do relatively well, because we live in this kind of mad world where we just borrow too much compared to how much we earn. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
In terms of Vinanz, though, I mean, I think one of the kind of the key things for me is that we're talking about like setting the London Bitcoin company apart from anybody else. In the Bitcoin space, it's all about culture and leadership, right? And obviously you're the leader of it, but, you know, what kind of company culture are you fostering at the company? How does it align with your vision, become the leading Bitcoin company in the UK?
I'm trying to build a team, and don't take any offense to this, but with less gray hair rather than more gray hair. Like I
don't have any yet. I'm good.
Okay, Hewie.
Looking at you, Kev.
Oh, Phil, look at him.
Just because you've dyed your hair blonde.
I actually do.
On my hair.
I do dye it like platinum gray at some time, but it's like I want to have like a young vibe amongst the company. I think there's enough. No disrespect, but there's enough dinosaurs running Bitcoin treasury companies in the world. And I think the market will appreciate like a fresher front-facing crew doing one too. And I think, you know, all the best people I know in crypto who I'm, you know, trying to bring into this, you know, they're all young guys. And I think we have a certain level of understanding, you know, that kind of supersedes experience that within the Bitcoin space that we can bring to this. And, you know, we are in, you know, effectively a beauty parade, right? It's, you know, who can model themselves as the most beautiful treasury company that everyone wants to buy. And, you know, one aspect of that is changing the name. Another aspect of that is who you have as a spokesman for the company, right? Or who you have as spokespeople for the company.
Well, this is the thing. It's about attracting talent, right? When you look at Smarter Web Company or Coincillium, and I won't name the names attached, but there's a lot of like Twitter, LinkedIn accounts kind of pushing them. And I guess that's almost what you need to do, don't you? As in attract that kind of top talent and go, this is who we should be the horse that you should be backing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I guess that's probably what you're spending all your time doing at the moment.
I mean, it's you know, I've only joined what 2 months ago.
2 months, 3 months now. Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't counted, but recently enough that I haven't had time to fully, build out what I want this company to look like yet. And there will be a point, I think, at some point over the next month or so that I'll be fully happy with everything in place, and then we can proceed effectively and build up the business, build up the name recognition. I want to get to that level, like I said on the last pod. I want to get to that Metaplanet level of hype, in the UK and across the world, where people are recognizing our name, and we've become renowned for what we.
Yeah.
And I know, like, one aspect of that, 100% I understand, is delivery, right? The most important aspect is delivery. There's no point in marketing yourself just based off hot air. And I know that delivery effectively is the best form of marketing, but I also think the way you dress yourself up and the way you present yourself, says me wearing a t-shirt right now, but is important, right? In a crypto way, in a Bitcoin
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I don't know. I mean, when I go to London, I wear a suit, right? I don't wear a suit at home, but like
I never,
different social situations.
I threw my suit away like 6 years ago.
Yeah, I threw my suit away a week before I signed on a new client who was very insistent. He liked to meet in a suit. So learn that lesson the expensive way.
No, I think when I'm
it's
walking
the older
around,
generation. You can't.
yeah, no,
it's fair enough.
I do, when I'm walking around Wall Street, I know that I will have to suit up, and I will have to act like
Become Barney Simpson,
yeah,
embody him.
basically, right.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, we talk about like, company culture. I mean, what's your personal motivation to lead the company at the moment? And I guess, on top of that, there's challenges in the space at the moment. We're going through the standard curve that happens when, Bitcoin treasury is launched in a country. You have like this massive spike, and then it comes down again, then it consolidates and hopefully rises again. So what's the biggest challenge at the moment, and what's kind of motivating you to push through it? Because it's not easy for anyone in the space for the past few days, has it?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest challenge is just, all of us treasury companies in the UK working together and getting that sentiment back, right? And that means, everyone needs to act accordingly, and everyone needs to be, everyone needs to communicate with the market and, keep their investor base updated. I think that's really important. And, I know it's really difficult I probably shouldn't talk about, price movements too much and stuff like that. But what I will say is I know it's really difficult because I've been in the shoes of an investor many times when, you're down on your investment and things like that. So yeah, it's all about kind of almost coddling your shareholder base and over updating them at times like this and making sure that they're still feeling comfortable holding your stock, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's essentially that.
That is that. Yeah. And then just kind of more widely, I mean, we've seen in the US, this is a massive push to become the crypto hub of the world. The UK kind of seesaws between wanting to be a crypto hub and wanting to like legislate it out of existence is what it feels like. And I guess the question is, what can companies do to kind of push the UK to become a crypto hub? And what are you guys doing to make sure that if it becomes a crypto hub, you're kind of the spider at the center of the web?
So
Or maybe you're not. Maybe you're not. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
no. I mean, I think everyone's got to do their fair share of lobbying, right? Like I'm like, well, one of my godfather sits in one of the houses in Westminster. So, I've been pinging him and emailing him, and I'm like, come on, you got to host an event for us. You got to let us come through, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, we'll do something at some point for sure. And then we've got it like the I forget the name of the company now, but there's a good group of guys who I met in Vegas who are pushing the UK government, for more for clearer regulation on the space, and for to encourage adoption and things like that. So yeah, I think we all just have to make a concerted effort, to hassle our local MPs, local councillors, or whatever, that we want to be a market leader in this space. Rishi Sunak, for all that was wrong about that man, he was very forward looking in terms of cryptocurrency and tech in general, and he was a vocal supporter of Bitcoin and things like that. So I just hope that Keir Starmer finds time amongst the rest of the things he's doing, to take a proper look at the industry and understand the benefits of us becoming a market leader in the UK.
Well, someone's going to be the market leader.
Yeah.
I'll always say someone. There's going to be multiple countries, multiple companies, but
I just think, we do, like, back to the cultural thing that you were asking about, my personal views on company culture. Like, I wish Brits could be a bit more enthusiastic about just generally being a bit more innovative. We had
I was going to make that exact point.
we have such a rich history, right? Especially, I always like to say the Scottish people have such a rich history.
We invented everything. We invented everything.
Literally,
well, not everything, but enough of everything to be proud of it.
Yeah.
And then you kind of like, yeah, I went to school near Reading, right? And you look at like the Oxford, Cambridge Arc, and like life science companies that we start, but then we don't scale because we
Yeah.
don't back them properly, or the fact we've got Rolls-Royce, which should, is probably one of the most advanced companies in the world, and it has like a tiny valuation. And then you look at it and you go, the FTSE 100, there's like what, one or two maybe tech stocks in there.
Yeah.
AI and cryptocurrency together, that's how we can boost technological advancement and innovation in the UK. And then once you have that spark, then everything else will come back. Because at the moment, why is the index suffering? I mean, we can talk like stamp duty and like the savings culture over investing, but it's also the reality that like when people start investing, they go, oh, I'll buy Tesco shares and I'll have like a 2%, 3% dividend and like a tiny capital gain every year. And then you go, oh, this isn't really worth it.
Yeah.
Versus if you were investing in startup AI companies or crypto companies that do like 1,000% in like 3 or 4 years because they've generated that return, then actually you might forget more of an investing culture. So, again, it's another thing. It's when you're looking more broadly, the crypto treasury companies, the Bitcoin in particular treasury companies, they're a way to boost tech and AI in the UK that we just haven't had for years and years.
Yeah, I completely agree.
What about solving the government's problems in terms of debt? They've got spiraling debt. Can these Bitcoin companies innovatively help those governments to actually get out of that debt?
I mean, the most protective thing that they could do, in my opinion, is to have a Bitcoin treasury reserve as at a state level, right? Because that automatically defends them against the collapse of fiat. And that's probably the number one strategy. I saw that someone wrote a letter to them recently, and they said there's no plans to adopt one as of yet. So in terms of like the wider debt issue that we all have in the Western world, or most countries in the Western world have, I was interested to see Trump's tweet the other day saying everyone needs to spend so they can get re-elected, and we'll fix the problem by growth. I am somewhat of a believer in that. If you spend more and you grow more, then you can effectively cancel out what you're spending. And Japan is seemingly this economy which is always on the edge of collapse, but never seriously collapses, right? They have a re-rate of the yen or whatever, but when you go to Tokyo, you don't realize the country's got this entirely huge national debt, right? It seems to just keep ticking over. This whole modern monetary theory thing, issuing huge Japanese government debt to big Japanese companies who, never going to default the government, seems to work. I'm not an economist, but I think I'm not a believer in the collapse of Western civilization because we print too much money. But I'm also not a believer in holding fiat simply because, the reason I like Bitcoin and not holding fiat is because I don't like my pounds being effectively devalued when I hold them in the bank and losing their purchasing power, right?
Yeah, I mean, the scenario is if the governments did take a position in these things, then more than likely they're going to advance their position because the last question I have, I suppose, is where do we see Bitcoin going? Because all of these treasury companies are going to be buying Bitcoin. This is going to lead to more people buying Bitcoin. This is going to be leading to more institutions buying Bitcoin. I mean, I was speaking with one of the Bitcoin plays the other week, Priority AI, and they've basically just set up an SME system now on AI that allows small, medium-sized companies to buy Bitcoin themselves.
That's really cool.
So that's really like 4,000 companies, 4 million companies in the UK that if they sign up to this can buy Bitcoin because they're going through this AI process. So what the point I'm trying to make is all of this demand is going to achieve what for Bitcoin?
I mean, yeah, like I had a chat with Bitcoin News yesterday on a live stream, and we were kind of discussing where is the Bitcoin coming from to satisfy this treasury code demand, right? And I think someone's figured it out, and that it's the Chinese miners from 2017 when they used to own more than 50% of the mining pool out there, are the kind of the selling party right now. So those Chinese miners weren't necessarily Bitcoin believers. They were just operating something which they had a huge advantage of, i.e. cheap electricity and a very good supply line out there, with the AMP miners and whatnot. So I do think like there's going to be this overspill of demand at some point over the course of the next year. perhaps when they run out of coins, or perhaps the buy pressure just gets too much for them to sell into, and then we start going north very quickly. And yeah, you get, if you think about it, you're a big name in the Bitcoin space right now. We've seen Jack Mallers set up his 21XXI or whatever, 21 shares or whatever it's called. Not 21 shares, 21 capital, whatever. You've seen Anthony Pompliano, another another big Bitcoiner, set up his $750 million SPAC. You've seen Nakamoto, David Bailey, the biggest proponent of treasury companies, set up his like $700 million SPAC. And you're probably thinking there's probably another dozen being worked on underneath that, right? Like, if these big Bitcoiners are realizing they can set up these huge SPACs, do a great thing for Bitcoin, and let's be honest, enrich themselves at the same time too, they're going to keep doing it, right? There's going to be this kind of waterfall, and as long as investors are happy to keep giving them money and they keep backing it up with Bitcoin, and Bitcoin keeps going up, it's like this super cycle of self-fulfilling
prophecy and a Bitcoin squeeze, whether you like it or not. That's exactly what it is. It's a squeeze.
Yeah,
not enough, over demand, not enough supply. And the difference is that the supply can never be made up because you can't make more Bitcoins.
Exactly that.
And I think that's the fundamental deal around the whole thing. You can't make any more of them.
Yeah, you just it's finite.
You can't make any more, but you can go fractional. A lot of people forget that, it's fractional trading as well. So
I just wonder how much leverage there is in the market, but I just think most of these holding Bitcoin treasury companies aren't levering up at all, right? So they really will have no need to sell their Bitcoin. That is coming off market, and that's effectively locked up if you look at it in the right way. So yeah, it's just the more people can raise and the more people can buy, it's just forever bullish, right, for Bitcoin.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think we've talked long enough there. On that note, we'll say Hewie Rattray, CEO of the London Bitcoin Company, formerly Vinanz. Thanks very much for appearing back on the podcast.
No, thank you very much for having me back so soon.
Thanks. Sorry for the grey hair, Hewie, and we'll speak.
I'm all for it, honestly.
This podcast was brought to you by Roast PR Limited. If you would like to appear on a future episode of The Sunday Roast, please email admin@thesundayroast.net.